个。
Hey guys, Steve Heffron here from the Healthy Back Institute, and yes, this is my first attempt at doing a Facebook Live event, so give me a little bit of a break. Yes, this is my office. This is where I test products and supplements, and this is where I do all my corresponding with my customers. And so if I have spoken to you, communicated with you in any way, hello, and I hope that I've been of benefit. Today, while we are in the middle of a pandemic, I've got my daughter here helping me film this, and we are going to go over foods that can literally turn the body's inflammatory process to a minimum and allow that inflammation to drain from the body while allowing growth to happen. Now, in order to do that, I need to go to the whiteboard. Let me begin with the caveat. If you have allergies to any foods that I talk about, use your best judgment. If you have or are on a medical diet, use your best judgment, because I will be making general statements about foods that may not apply to you. Okay, these are my rules relative to life and relative to the current situation we're in. Look, we need to make sure that our bodies are in optimal shape, condition, physiologically, so that we can tolerate the stress that we're all going through. So my first rule is never get behind. Never get behind means never get behind in your weight, your money, your relationships, or your work. It creates too much stress, and stress brings down your immune system. We have to be able to control that. And one great way of doing that is just perceiving yourself as never letting yourself get behind. Below that comes everything matters. Everything matters in every concept of life. Every concept of life. You cannot do one thing over here and not do it over here and expect everything to be okay. That's just not the way it works. Unfortunately, people begin to tell me that, oh, I can't do everything, it's too much work. So I created my 1% rule. My 1% rule says do those things 1%, do enough of them, and you can start to make a statistically significant difference in the way your life is and will be. 4 and 5 sort of go together, but they're two separate statements. It's not just enough to know these days. You actually have to do it. And 5 is addicted to your lifestyle. Look, for those of us who have heart conditions, hypertension, diabetes, prediabetes, metabolic syndrome, smoke, drink, don't exercise, you're in trouble. Life has changed. It's no longer a situation where we can do things half-ass. It is imperative that we elevate our lives, our bodies, our thoughts, feelings, and emotions to make sure that we are optimal from a physical, mental, spiritual point of view, as well as our immune system. Now, when we're talking about how to eat foods that help control inflammation, we also have to conceive on the principle of balance is everything. Look, we eat between the spectrum of good to bad. Our bodies are attracted to that which is good. Our bodies are repelled from that which is bad. But when we force that bad into our bodies have to react in some way, some shape. And the primary way that it does that is it creates a subclinical inflammatory response. It's not good, it's not healthy, and we shouldn't do it. In order to help us eat within the spectrum of good to bad, we can think about eating colors. Eat the rainbow, leave out the white. Understand that we shouldn't be cooking all our food, so we have to have balance between raw and cooked food. The amount, most likely we are eating too much. Cut it back. There's a couple of good statements that says you're bored, not hungry, or you're thirsty, not hungry. Fiber versus bulk, very difficult to eat 30 grams of fiber a day unless it's planned. So you have to plan it. And the most important one I feel today, talking about foods and inflammation and supporting the immune system, is the ratio between omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids. That ratio, optimal is 2-to-1. Okay is 4-to-1. Most people in the United States, if not in the world, eat a ratio between 10 and 50-to-1. If you have a long-standing chronic condition with acute flare-ups, or if you want your immune system to be optimal, you cannot possibly sustain a 50-to-1 ratio of omega-6 to omega-3s. You have to bring it down. And in order to do that, follow me to the Nook, and we're going to go ahead and show you some foods. Hey guys, Steve Heffron here from the Healthy Back Institute, and we're going to go over 12 of the top foods to literally turn off inflammation, allow it to drain from the body, and support growth at the same time. I'm going to talk about food groups and best foods within that group. The first one are meats and proteins. So in order to bring our omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acid ratio more into balance, we have to consider seafood, wild-caught, cold water seafood or fish. Salmon just happens to be popular and delicious and most likely to be used. I will say one thing about salmon or fish in general. Most fish is farm raised now. I would encourage you to go to your better grocery store or food or seafood markets in order to purchase your seafood, because there are different standards by which resellers use in order to sell certain fish seafood items. For example, Wegmans and Whole Foods have great information about how they do it, and it's very important that you do it. So I encourage you to go and research how supermarkets in your area purchase and where that seafood comes from. That's not to say that beef, chicken, pork are not. They all have a purpose. Those are the omega-6s. Those are the ones where we cannot go 50-1 to it. So we have to realize that the beef, chicken, pork, and all the other meat sources are okay when eaten in balance, when eaten within the spectrum of good to bad. The next food group would be nuts. So I'm going to put walnuts at the top of the list, but walnuts notwithstanding, it's just not about the walnut. Understand that nuts are a great source of protein, fiber, and good fat, but realize that we cannot continue to eat them at the levels of which most people do, because it's just too much omega-6 fatty acids, and we have to balance that out. Realize that one of the best ways to do it is to eat a mixed nuts. So walnuts, Brazilian nuts, hazelnuts, almonds, cashews, great best way to stay within balance in eating your nuts. Vegetables. The two vegetables at the top of the list for foods that actually reduce inflammation when you eat them are onions and carrots. That's not to say that cauliflower, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, asparagus are not good. They are. They have a purpose. But realize that onions and carrots are at the top of the list. And if you don't like onions and carrots, eating them by themselves, maybe you blend the carrots and onions with the cauliflower, the squash, and whatever other vegetable you have, so that you get at least some of that. You get some type of balance in there. Realize that seeds also have a great source of omega-3 fatty acid, and that would be in flax seeds. Flaxseed can be put into cereals, egg, soup, and this bag should be part of your daily consumption in order to increase your omega-3 fatty acid ratios. Chia seeds, poppy seeds, sunflower seeds, they all have a purpose, they all have a value, but realize that flax seeds are at the top of the list. Fruits. Tart cherries are actually at the top of the list. Very low glycemic index and just super full of nutrients. And however, cherries have a seasonality to them, and so they're not always easy to find. Realize that all the other fruits have a purpose and have a value. So oranges, lemon, lime, apples, they all have a value. The two fruits, bananas and mangoes, are on the high end of the glycemic index, and being on the high end of the glycemic index creates an inflammatory risk. So again, balance. Don't eat too many bananas. Don't eat too many mangoes. Balance the fruit that you eat. Now, a couple things about fruit. I never want you to eat fruit late at night. I only want you to eat fruit first thing in the morning, because fruit, when it goes into the system, it uses its own sugar and ferments, creates gas and other digestive issues. So you don't want to eat fruit at night. Now, a couple other fruits that are worthy mention. Pineapple and kiwi and papaya. these fruits actually have what are called proteolytic enzymes. Proteolytic means they break down proteins. So pineapple, kiwi, papaya are excellent for digestion. So if you can have a digestive tract that is functioning in optimal situation, again, that is going to support your immune system. Now, if you have enough proteolytic enzymes in digestion, these enzymes actually go into the bloodstream and go systemically, and then they do all kinds of wonderful things, including supporting the immune system. So pineapple, papaya, kiwi, and actual raw honey is also a good source of enzymes. Spices and herbs. All right, there are 3 on the top of the list, but realize that all of them have value in flavor. Ginger and turmeric are good. They're just good. They are. In my mind, they're hard to cook with, so I don't use them as much as I could or should. Garlic, on the other hand, is at the top of the list, and everyone knows how to cook with garlic. So I encourage you to use more garlic in your cooking. It is literally full of nutrients, and it has a nutritional value that can turn that valve off of inflammation and let that inflammation drain from the body. Just think of that every time you want to eat something good. Now, greens, iceberg, romaine, arugula, all the other greens, they really don't have that much nutritional value. They're not helping you grow, and they're not detracting. They're sort of just a placeholder, except for spinach. Spinach is really good. So in the context of greens, we would say more spinach as an anti-inflammatory food, and just realize that those other greens are there. They are helping the process, but not necessarily of anti-inflammatory value. So one of my rules was addicted to your lifestyle. So starches, starch is one of those. Starches are rice, potato, couscous. If your mother cooked you meat and potatoes, and now you eat meat and potatoes, you need to change the way you think, because you are addicted to your lifestyle. Meat and potatoes is not a relevant diet in the 21st century. That said, sweet potato, yams, and all the sweet potatoes in the family, all the different varieties and colors of sweet potato, they all have nutrient value, and they all are the best in class. And so if you are looking for some starch that you would want to use, sweet potato is the one. So dairy, milk, cheese, not so good. Kefir is a food product that will help lower inflammatory process. From a cheese point of view, none of them are great, but low-fat mozzarella is the best in class. Balance the dairy. Just realize that it's high in omega-6, and if you're eating too much omega-6, you're going to throw that ratio off and you're going to stay in pain. Beverages, pretty simple. Black and green tea, super important. Turns off that inflammatory response, let the body drain, helps the body heal. The other side of the coin is adequate water. No one on the planet can tell you how much water to drink or how much water you need. Every literature all the scientific literature will only talk about adequate water. So teas, water, coffee is actually okay. It's what you put in it. I use a little bit of stevia and a little bit of creamer. It's just what I have to do to drink it. But realize that it's not a hindrance. It's not a benefit. It's one of those ones in the middle that are just there. Bone broth. Bone broth is essentially a superfood. Look, it has glucosamine, chondroitin, hyaluronic acid, minerals, and super high in protein. One of those nutrients that can be put into soups or drinking just as a hot drink. Fantastic. Turns that inflammatory process off, allows the body to drain that inflammation. Just think of that every time you use bone broth. Now, be sure that you're not confusing bone broth with chicken stock or beef stock. They're labeled completely different. One has no protein, one is high in protein. One has no value, one has a lot of value. And finally, eggs. I separated out eggs because they're very popular. You go to the store right now and you can't find eggs in the supermarket. I was actually very lucky. I went super early in the morning and found some eggs. Now, egg whites, super anti-inflammatory. Super anti-inflammatory. The yolk, because it's got the omega-6s, a little anti-inflammatory. So there's a couple of things we can do. I buy omega-3 enhanced eggs, meaning the chicken was either fed flaxseed or fish, and thus the yolk has more omega-3s in them. The other thing that you can do, and again, this is a balanced scenario, if you were to have 2 eggs, one, you have the egg white and the egg yolk. The second one, you take the egg yolk out. Again, just a way to balance the whole situation. Now, I've gone over a lot of foods that can help support the body, turning that inflammation off, allowing the body to drain, supporting growth, supporting the immune system, supporting your body while it's going through the different stages of healing. Now, I've also created a second video on the 5 worst foods. So if you want to see the 5 worst foods to never eat, click on the link below and realize that we are one day closer to getting out of this mess that we're in. Until next time, take care.